In fact, I wanted to ask you that question also was your writing has always been more urban centric.
It is.
On the problems of the urban women, their problems or their progress or whatever it is. Haven't you ever thought of dwelling into a bit about the rural India?
I'm indifferent to the concerns of rural India. But we have to understand that more than 70% of rural India is illiterate. My writing about them, for them, has no meaning. My making a point in government circles or where it will make some difference to the quality of their life has much more validity. So if I at all want to make that change and see that change happen, I have to use the platforms that I have, and they are very influential, powerful platforms. So whether it's about women's reservation, whether it's healthcare issues, whether it's about women's concerns, dowry debts or marital violence, I can do it only through what I feel I have some control over. So I have never ever been cocooned from those realities. But I don't have to write a book, a novel about them to wake society up.
No, as you rightly put it, because our opinions, the urban India problems, they would certainly not be relevant to them in any case, and it has to be voiced on a different platform.
Absolutely.
As you say. What are your views on reservation bill? And do you think it is the right step in the right direction? And would it be something that you would highlight in 60 years of March of independent India?
Well, I have slightly different views on reservation because in principle I'm against the quota system on any level. In principle I'm against reservations per se or any form of subsidy. So I would say my feelings are mixed at this point. It is certainly seen as a very big step forward for the women of India. But how we deal with it in how responsible a way, whether we are going to have the right quality of women in Parliament representing the concerns of India and Indian women, or whether we are going to have women who are just there in order to fill in the numbers. So that is something that we have to be vigilant.
In empowerment of rural women, don't you think?
Well, rural women have done brilliantly with the Panchayati Raj, wherever they have headed panchayats. And we have over 1 lakh women today who are sarpanchas, and they have brought about remarkable change. They have brought down corruption levels. They have made sure alcoholism is addressed in their villages. They have just made men more responsible. So of course it has brought about the kind of change at the grassroots level that one would have only hoped for and dreamt about. But in Parliament there are chances of politicians placing women there who will follow their agenda. So we as media, or we as from outside the system, have to be very, very vigilant about that not happening.
That's very true. Shobha, the feature writing is basically looked upon, or rather in my opinion, you become an opinion maker for the society. And there could be a very fine line between subjectivity and prejudices. So have you ever encountered a situation like this? And of course it is something a columnist would always fear, because a small bias could creep in. So have you ever sort of encountered a situation like this,
Oh, I encounter the situation all the time and every week, 4 times a week, because I write 4 columns a week. But the fact that you've been given a column, and I've been a columnist for over 35 years, and my editors have never ever intervened with the content of what I'm saying, it means that it's an opinion that is paid attention to, that counts, that has credibility above everything else. And whether or not you agree with it, I have the right to state it in a democracy. That is the power of democracy, and the readers have the right to challenge it and say we do not agree, or we find this has prejudice. But there is no such thing in the world called an objective column. All columns are by nature, by definition, they're subjective. I'm putting myself on the line and saying this is what I think. It doesn't mean this is what you have to think.
That's it.
So I think it's very
In fact,
fair.
why I thought of it was I read your article on tragedy of Goa. It was a column that was written, and the last para stated that Goa has become heaven of pedophiles and the drug peddlers and the conmen and the very unscrupulous builders and so on. Some of us thought that it was a prejudiced paragraph, and some of us thought that you were free to express what you feel.
These sort of sensitivities, I think we are a mature enough society to be able to take concerned criticism. It's not as if Mumbai is not criticized constantly, and as a Mumbaikar there are things about Mumbai that distress me a lot, that I feel need to be addressed and that need to be voiced, because if we don't do that, we are not doing our jobs. So there may be very many aspects of Mumbai that are not palatable, and whether it's the insider-outsider issue. I have never weighed my opinion where that is concerned. Or there are a lot of things which I find are wrong in Delhi, I would say it. So Goa should take it in the right spirit, because it is a very, very important tourist destination for India. And if we are going to get a very bad international press on account of whether it's pedophile, it's overbuilding, it's random development, it's rape cases, it's Russians taking over tracts and villages in Goa, dealing in Russian currency, prostitution, drugs, these exist and we cannot pretend they don't. And if they're going to impact Goa negatively, I think every Indian should be concerned, not just Goa. Yeah.
Shobha, Bombay was changed to Mumbai. Do you think it ever made a difference to Aam Aadmi? And was it really required? How do you? What's your?
But I'm just very surprised that nobody asks when Madras was changed to Chennai or Calcutta to Kolkata. Yes, so when Beijing, when Peking became Beijing, and Istanbul was Constantinople, and there are lots of cities in the world which have gone back to their original name. Kochi is Kochi, Thiruvananthapuram didn't exist as Thiruvananthapuram. So I really don't understand what the fuss is about Mumbai. Mumbai, when we spoke Marathi, and I'm a Maharashtrian, it was always referred to as Mumbai when we spoke Marathi. Bombay was an anglicized version of Mumbai. So, and what you call it doesn't matter, it's the quality of life. It's what Mumbai, Bombay, whatever you wish to call it, stands for. So the attempt to create divisiveness on the basis of a name change when other cities have not had to face any such issues, I think it's really misplaced kind of importance.
Mumbai for everybody,
Yeah, but I'm very happy calling it Mumbai. I'm very happy.
What I want to ask you next is, there has been a certain amount of polarization from after 26/11. And Bombay has always been looked upon as the avant-garde and a commercial hub, and a very pulsating, exciting commercial hub. Now, do you think it has changed after this?
Not at all. I mean, it has. I hope it has changed. In fact, made us more alert, made us more aware of how vulnerable Mumbai continues to be, and how successive governments have neglected that area of securing the city. And what happened at 26/11 should never ever be forgotten, and it should never be put aside as something that is going to traumatize us to an extent that we don't want to deal with it. I want to deal with it, and I want accountability, and I want the government to realize that even today Mumbai remains a very, very a target that it's not, we haven't seen the end with 26/11. So if we don't keep our politicians and our administrators on that, and our police force in that state of alertness, then we shouldn't be paying the taxes that we do. And Mumbai should never ever be complacent about its own security, and never allow our so-called leadership to be complacent either. I think Mumbai deserves better, and the more we speak up, the better it is for our city. Today is the Kasab judgment in Mumbai, and It's a pity I'm not there because it's something that I've been tracking and I've been speaking about very strongly. So Mumbai definitely deserves to get the kind of governance that it has not been at the receiving end of, and I will fight for it even if it makes me a very unpopular person.
Shobha, what I have always noticed is the elite Mumbaikars always maintain silence on these issues. Don't you think they should come down more heavily so that their opinions could make a difference?
I have spoken about that myself several times, that corporate India, most of it with their head offices in Mumbai, remains a silent spectator, and yet they expect all the privileges that go with their position, and they should be more proactive, and when their voices need to be heard, they should definitely be out there leading from the forefront, and not leave everything to politicians and activists.
Because I think their voice could certainly make a huge change, if they come down heavily. Another thing that always interested me was your comment on the reality shows, and I think you were very forthright and you were very razor sharp on what you felt about the TV shows, and especially what you wrote on Rahul Mahajan. Don't you think it's really absurd today that the way the TV channels are roping in our youngsters, making them more and more addicted to these cheap competitions and to make them believe in these reality shows? Would you send a message to our viewers, about what how they should receive it,
Even more than the youngsters who are, after all, they're just kids. It is their parents. And I find this whole, the craze, the reality television craze in India, it's a craze that the West has been through that whole cycle. I mean, it continues in different forms. But in India, because of the novelty value of it and the attraction of making quick money and a lot of money and fame, has distorted our entire approach to what responsible television should be about. And it really pains me to see some underage kids performing almost lewd and lurid acts. Obscene, it's obscene. And I can't bear to watch it, and I feel ashamed that their parents are not ashamed of pushing their children into shows of this kind.
I think our viewers would certainly respect these views and maybe change their opinions, because they are the ones, the parents are the ones who push in their...
I wish that there are citizens committees, citizens groups. We have access to having our voices heard in Parliament. I wish more people would do that. I wish more people would protest, send letters to the necessary authorities, whether it's the Information and Broadcasting Minister, whosoever it is, and make this a very strong, almost like a chain reaction against these shows.
Shobha, thank you so much for this candid interview, and it was a pleasure meeting you and talking to you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.